Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtottara that Sri Srimad's Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtottara that Sri Srimad's Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 8th day of March 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still studying chapter 13 entitled Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. Text 13 at the bottom of page 543. Geyam Yattat Pavakshyami Geyam Yattat Pavakshyami Yaj Gyatvarmitam Ashnute Yad Gyatvarmitam Ashnute. Let's try that again. Yad Gyatvarmitam Ashnute. You don't have that at the bottom of page 543? She's got the other book. Gyat Va Mritam. Isn't it Gyat Va Mritam? It's got to be. Okay. Going on. Anadi Matpadam Brahma. Anadi Matpadam Brahma. Nasat Tan Nasaruchite Nasatan Nasaruchite. Are you okay there?
I don't know. Maybe I'm something wrong with me, but it doesn't seem like it corresponds to the verses.
It's that one word, Gyat Vamritam. Is it?
I have Vinenam Yatta Pavashikami Jai Sinatan Tamahnute Anadi Mat Param Brahma Nasatang Nasada Uchete. Does it say? Okay.
All right, let's do it. We'll go on. All right. Geyam yattat pavakshyami yad gyatvam ashnute anadimat param brahma nasattan nasaruchite. Geyam yattat pavakshyami Yad Gyatvam Itamashnute Anadimat Param Brahma Nasattan Nasaruchate. Geyam Yattat Pavakshyami Yad Gyatvam Itamashnute Anadimat Param Brahma Nasattan Nasaruchate. Ross. Geyam Yattat Pavakshyami Yad Gyatvam Ashnute Anadimat Param Brahma Nasattan Nasaruchate. Geyam Yattat Pavakshyami Yad Gyatvam Itamashnute Anadimat Param Brahma Nasattan Nasaruchate. Geyam Yattat Pavakshyami Yad Gyatvam Itamashnute Anadimat Padam Brahma Nasattan Nasaruchate. Geyam the knowable, yat which, tat that, pravakshyami I shall now explain, yat which, gyatva knowing, amritam nectar, ashnute one tastes, anadi beginningless, matpadam subordinate to me, Brahma spirit, na neither, sat cause, tat that, na not, asat effect, uchite is said to be. Okay. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Purport. The Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable, first the soul, and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can relish the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out the history of the jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is beginningless. The Vedic literature confirms this. Jayate mriyate va vipaschit. Katha Upanishad 1.2.18. Excuse me. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord as the Supersoul is also stated in the Vedic literature, the Shvetashvara Upanishad 6.16, to be Pradhana Chaitragya Patir Ganeshaha, the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In the Smriti it is said, Dasa Bhuto Harir Eva Nanyasyaiva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahman Brahma as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the Supreme Brahman personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, Srila Prabhupada nicely sums up how far we've come in this chapter, beginning with Arjun's sixfold question, where he says, Prakatim Purusham Chaiva Chetam Chetaram Evacha Etad Vedanamichami Jnanam Gayam Chakeshava. I would like to know, oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, that's the soul, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge. So Prakriti is explained as the Chaitra. Prakriti is nature. And the nature is manifest to us more immediately as our own body, with all of its varieties of senses and everything, and externally also. And these together form the field of our activities. The soul is perceiving the world through the senses and reacting with the mind and the intelligence. This is pleasurable, this isn't, let me make a plan here, and go, in order to improve one's condition in the material world, if without he has no clue of spirit, how I can be more comfortable, how I can enjoy, how I can get away from danger, and how I can eat, and when I get tired, how to rest, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So that's the basic principle of every living entity. Some are so rudimentary in their consciousness that they practically are just living entities with the ability to relate a little bit. Like, think of a blade of grass. I was taking my walk and I was looking at all those blades of grass. Every one of them has a soul in there, and it's a tragic situation. Okay, they were mowing the lawn, and they're probably killing some, moving them on to the next body. Maybe it's a little flower. They get to be whatever it is. But still, that's the same Chaitra Gya. So that's the next question, is the field, Chaitra, the knower of the field, the soul, and we also learn that Krishna is there as a second knower in every body, every single body, human and subhuman and superhuman. And then comes, well, what is knowledge? What is the Prakriti? What is the Purusha? The Purusha is the living entity, is also the Chaitra Gya. But in the material conditioned state, we're trying to be enjoyers. This is not our actual position. Krishna is the Supreme Purusha, Parama Purusha. We are imitating him in our conditioned state. We're Prakriti trying to be Purusha. It's kind of an incompatible situation. So then comes, well, how can we realize all this and move on to our real state, regain our actual state? We need knowledge. And there's those 20 elements of knowledge that we learned about. And it's not knowledge in the ordinary sense. You think, well, I'm getting knowledge, okay, I'm going to learn this subject, I'll learn about this. It begins with humility and lack of pretension, worshipping the Acharya. There's a lot of activity in these 20 elements of knowledge. Worshipping the Acharya, very essential. Unalloyed and uninterrupted devotion to me. So that's all. How to realize these different categories, rather than just understand them theoretically, but really realize it. The practice of bhakti, basically. And what is the goal of all of this? Well, the goal has been presented as Krishna says, or as Prabhupada explains in the purport, the understanding of the soul, of the Brahman as the soul, and the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Isn't it? I now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So there's the individual Brahman, and then there's the Supreme Brahman. Right? I mean, we're also spirit. We're identical to Krishna in quality, but not in quantity. We're pure spirit. But because we are minute, because we're infinitesimal, we have the tendency to be covered by material energy. If we turn away from the Supreme Brahman, our relationship in the spiritual world, then we get overwhelmed by the varieties and the attractions of the material energy. That's explained in this very important verse in the 11th canto. What is the source of fear? In the spiritual world, there's no fear, right? It's Vaikuntha. Goloka Vrindavan is the supreme Vaikuntha planet. Vaikuntha means without any anxiety, without any fear. So, because we're completely connected to Krishna, and He's supreme, He's invincible, and we have no problem. But when we turn our back on that relationship, trying to be false enjoyers, controllers, and owners, and exploiters, then comes fear. So the verse goes like this: Bhayam tritiyabhanaveshitak syat ishadapetasya viparhiyo asmriti. There's a lot of important information in those two lines. So fear arises by becoming absorbed in the vitiya, means the second thing, or the dualities of this material world. Syat comes into being. And what the precipitating action is Isha Apetasya. Isha is the Lord, that's Krishna. Apetasya, turning away from Him. In other words, forgetting. Vipari, and everything becomes topsy-turvied. We're meant to be servants, we try to be masters. We're meant to want to be enjoyers, we turn out to be sufferers. And on and on and on like that. So, asmati. By forgetting, viparyayo, it means that backwards. So what's the solution? Now first the next sentence is, how did this come about? Tanmayato. By the influence of Maya, the illusory energy, which has these two factors. Avaranatmaka Shakti and Prakshitatmaka Shakti. Very interesting. You don't have to memorize those words, but just the meaning. Avaranata means to cover. As soon as we don't want to surrender to Krishna, we get covered by illusion. Forget all about Krishna. And we are deluded into thinking that, Haribol, nice to see you again. Deluded into thinking we're the enjoyers, we're the controllers, like that. So, page number? You can show her. So that's all Maya's influence. There's a very nice verse Prabhupada would quote from Jagadananda Pandit's Prema Vivarta. Jagadananda Pandit was a very intimate servant of Lord Chaitanya. Isn't it nice pastimes in CC? We can tell sometime. And he wrote this book called Prema. What is it I say? Prema Vivarta. Prema Vivarta. Thank you. So here's the verse. Krishna boli se jeev bhoga vancha kare nikatasta mayatare japatiya dari. It's very graphic. So what it says is that the jiva, the living entity, that's us, when we desire sense gratification, we forget Krishna. Krishna bhuli se. Bhuli means to forget. Krishna bhuli se jiva. The jiva, the soul, forgets Krishna. Why? Bhoga vancha kare, with the desire to enjoy. Bhoga, right? We know that bhoga and prasadam. But don't eat that, it's bhoga. Right? Let it be offered first, then it becomes prasadam. Now, you're just eating for your own pleasure, then that's maya. But if you're eating with the consciousness, oh, this is offered to Krishna, you know. So, bhoga vanchakari. You desire bhoga, separate enjoyment. So that desire and acting on that desire is under the auspices, if you will, of Maya Devi. And she's covering our knowledge and dragging us down. So that word nikatasta means Maya's right there. You know, she's right there. As soon as you turn away from Krishna with the desire to enjoy, then she covers your knowledge and throws you down. That nikatasta, japatiya, just visualize a football field, tackling, pulling you down away from the spiritual consciousness, the spiritual world, and that's how we got here. So this Bhagavad Gita and this chapter, all of these words are meant to give us a way back, show us how we can step by step regain our original consciousness, the Krishna consciousness. So that's what's happening here. And Prabhupada quotes several verses or parts of verses showing how the Supersoul is also the knower and the master of the three modes. And we are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. Now, what does that mean? I thought it just said you can leave the service. Well, you can leave the service of the personal Lord, but then you serve His energies. We're still serving Krishna, but you don't get that reciprocation. It's not bhakti. You know, it's sense gratification which produces misery, because it's always disappointing. Even if it's the most ecstatic sense gratification, it ends, and that ending is like, oh. You know, then you try to regain it. You know, in this way, you build some scars in your mind so that you're coming back again, try to enjoy, and it's oftentimes sinful. And this is how we've been trapped. So he's systematically telling us how to, with this knowledge, how we can reform our desires. So now he's going to describe the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Lord, in several verses here. Unless there's any discussion. Yes?
So just for clarification, the knowable is the same as the knower of the field? Because it says the knowable is the soul, right? But then earlier it says the knower of the field. Because like there's these 6 things that Arjun wants to know, but it seems like some of them are the same.
Okay, I think that the knowable is said here to be Brahma, right? Anadi, Matpadam, subordinate to me. Yeah, so the individual soul. That's the first aspect of the knowable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And but that's also the knower of the field, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure I was following.
Yeah, different capacities. Okay, text 14. Bottom of page 544. Sarvatak paniparam tat Sarvatok chishiro mukham Sarvatak shrutimaloke Sarvamavrittatishtati. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. Okay, so I think this Brahman is simultaneously the individual spirit and the Supreme Spirit. But remember, the Supersoul is also, in a way, subordinate to Krishna. It's an expansion of Krishna. Purport. As the sun exists diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the Supersoul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities, beginning from the first great teacher, Brahma, down to the small ants. There are unlimited heads, legs, hands, and eyes, and unlimited living entities. All are existing in and on the Supersoul. Therefore, the Supersoul is all-pervading. The individual soul, however, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That is not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge he will come to that stage, his thinking is contradictory. This means that the individual soul, having become conditioned by material nature, is not supreme. The supreme is different from the individual soul. The Supreme Lord can extend his hand without limit. The individual soul cannot. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that if anyone offers him a flower or a fruit or a little water, he accepts it. If the Lord is a far distance away, how can he accept things? This is the omnipotence of the Lord. Even though he is situated in his own abode, far, far away from earth, he can extend his hand to accept what anyone offers. That is his potency. In the Brahma Samhita 537, it is stated, Goloka eva nivasat takilatma bhutaha. Although he is always engaged in pastimes in his transcendental planet, he is all-pervading. The individual soul cannot claim that he is all-pervading. Therefore, this verse describes the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, not the individual soul. Yeah, well, that's pretty clear. Now, sometimes it's said that how does he have the hands everywhere and his eyes everywhere? Because we're everywhere. Because the living entities. I mean, not only human beings, but anyone who has eyes and hands. So how are they working? They're working because the Supersoul is giving intelligence and energy how they work. So in this way, he sees and perceives everything that way. Okay, let's go on. Sarvendriya gunabhasam Sarvendriya vivarjitam Asaktam sarvabhrichaiva Nirgunam gunabhoktracha. The Supersoul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time he is the master of all abodes of material nature. Purport: the Supreme Lord, although the source of all the senses of the living entities, doesn't have material senses like they have. Actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life they are covered with the material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental and are therefore called nirguna. Guna means the material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like ours. Although he is the source of all our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.19, in the verse, Apanipado javano grahita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. This is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the Supersoul. He, the Supersoul, has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see? He sees everything, past, present, and future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. This is also confirmed. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that the Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things. But his hands, legs, eyes, and senses are not contaminated by material nature. The Bhagavad, just to clarify, this Apanipado javano grahita, this is almost like a koan. You know, the Upanishads sometimes do that. Apanipado, he has no hands, he has no feet, but he grabs everything and he runs faster than everyone. He has no feet, but he runs. He has no hand, but he grabs. You know, well, how does that work? Because he doesn't have hands like us. He has spiritual hands, he has spiritual eyes, spiritual ears, and everything. So this is a way of kind of, you know, expanding the mind like the Buddhist koans or something. But this is really reality, and it's meant to have us stand in awe of the supremacy of the Lord. Okay. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, He appears as He is by His internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because He is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that His whole embodiment is spiritual. He has His eternal form, called Satchidananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see His head, face, hands, or legs, He has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see His form. Therefore, the impersonalists, who are still materially affected, cannot understand the personality of Godhead. So, there's a verse, let's see if I can remember it. Etad ishvara ishasya prakati stopi tadgunai nayujyate saratmastam yata buddhi tarashraya. Something like that. He said, Etad ishvara, this is the supremacy of the Lord. This is that even though He's in the material energy, He comes here periodically. All of the material energy, He's not affected at all by the material energy. Because all of it is in Him, meaning it's under His control. And the intelligence of those who are fully surrendered to Him are also not affected by the waves of the material energy, the different modes of nature. In other words, the state that the great devotees can achieve by constant immersion in thinking of the Lord and serving the Lord and being Krishna conscious is similar to what the Lord enjoys. They could, of course, with material bodies, they're going to be affected. But your consciousness is not whipped around like when we're in Maya. Because you're on that plane, you're fixed on that plane. The Nishta platform, which is mentioned in again in those series of verses in the second chapter, first canto, where it says, Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavat uttama shloka bhakti bhavati naishtiki. Naishtiki, nishta, the same word. So this is the progression by hearing about the Lord, which is the most important service, absorbing the mind, remembering. Then it says, Nashta prayeshu, the abhadras in your consciousness, in your heart. Abhadras are inauspicious things. Material desires, grievances, all kinds of fears, ignorance, all these things are being cleansed away by proper hearing and chanting of the Lord's glories, especially the mantra. So Nashta, when they're probably maybe 70% cleared off, Nashta prayeshu means largely but not completely. Nashta destroyed, these abhadras. Abhadra nityam, how? By constantly serving the Bhagavat. Two forms of Bhagavat, person Bhagavat, the spiritual master, and the book Bhagavat. By hearing, chanting, studying, remembering, trying to live one's life according to it. So, nityam Bhagavat, this Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke, Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Then the devotion to Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, becomes more and more nishta, fixed. And that's explained in this wonderful set of, I've mentioned these before, there's I think 10 steps from faith to love, shraddha to prema. It's worth going over these daily, really. The process begins with shraddha. Not pure shraddha, but respect, interest, enough to bring you into the association of devotees. Now, the best is association, like we have, But, because this is the age of media, right, you can also be in association by reading the books, hearing, at a distance and so forth. But the interest is there. Out of all of the trillions of sites on the internet, you want to hear Mayapur Kirtan Mela Day 2, right? And you hit there's Vishrambar. Somebody told me, or Maharaj, ashram, that this Vishwambar, he's a famous kirtaniya. I knew him when he was a child because he's the son of one of the devotees who I knew for years, an Indian boy in Alatra. He grew up to be really famous, kirtaniya. So he's there, and Maharaj said, he at a certain point in the kirtan, he stops and he sings this Madhurashtaka, Kevalashtaka, Madhuram Madhurevi. And he reads my poetic translations. So naturally I had to find that on YouTube, and sure enough, he had, he's reading it off his phone, what else, and he's, of course, devotees didn't come out devotees, came devotees and kind of messed up. But it was sweet. So, I don't know how I got onto that, but that's the process of getting to that. Okay, so bhajan, right? You come into contact with the devotees by faith, and then you're affected by the atmosphere. You're reading the books, you're hearing the devotees. So then you want to also perform some bhajan. So it's Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya. First comes some interest or faith or respect, Prabhupada says, preliminary faith, brings you into the association somehow, hopefully directly, maybe indirectly. And then you think, well, let me try this process. They say it's so easy, I wonder where I can get those beads. So you type in, sure enough, Krishna.com, they'll send you some beads. All right, so now chanting and you go into the temple, whatever. So then, after some time, you're serious about it. You want to, so then, by bhajana kriya, you're becoming purified, and you want to get initiation. You want to get that step confirmed, so that you're famously, you're fixed on the path. And so if that happens, that's a very important aspect. And then you go in, and the anartha nivritti is taking place. The anartha means the gradual cleansing away of the abhadras or anarthas. Anarthas are things you don't want in the heart, the bad habits. And then, if you progress nicely, you come to the point of nishtha. This is real faith. You're convinced, yes, this is it for me. I believe in God. I believe in Krishna. Yes, I still have some impurities, but I want. And so nishtha means shraddha. This is defined by Lord Chaitanya. Shraddha shabde vishwas kohe sudradhan nishtroy Krishna bhakti korli sarva karma krita hoy. The really important verse. This word shabde in Bengali is kind of an idiom meaning, it's like in a translation, or this is what it means. Shabde means, Shraddha means vishwas kohe, a very firm faith, a very firm conviction. Sudvidha, that what? Krishna bhakti korli sarva karma krita hoy. But just by practicing the principles and practices of bhakti yoga, all my aspirations will be fulfilled. This is I don't have to do it part-time and do something else. Of course, you have to keep body and soul together. But everything can be done in the context of part of Krishna consciousness. And that's a very nice platform to come to. Then gradually, what's in the other stages, you go in ruchi. It's not that until you get to nishta, there's no ruchi. You get a little taste even the first day you walk in the temple. Because probably you had some previous lifetime where you practiced Krishna consciousness, and even you don't know, this sounds very familiar, Anyway, there's ruchi going on, but here the ruchi continues. It gets stronger and stronger. Ruchi is taste. Everything becomes a source of pleasure in Krishna consciousness. Serving, the festivals, the chanting, of course, the deities. It never gets old because it's spiritual. So that ruchi gradually thickens. It's described like stirring a pot of sugar water until it gets thicker and thicker, boiling it. It becomes asakta, which is an actual attraction to Krishna. That's the beginning of the 17th chapter. Maya asakta manaparta, which becomes more thicker into bhava and then prema. That may take lifetimes, but that's what it is. Hopefully not. So it's very scientifically put out, and Prabhupada would quote this. It's quoted at least once in the purports here in the Bhagavatam. It's from near the beginning of the Bhagavad Sindhu. And it's very nice. It's like, okay, here's the course. It's like you go to college. Oh, I can see the path now. I'll take this course, and then I'll get the degree. So he says, yes, this is how you can do it. And it's practical, bhajana kriya. And of course, surrender means giving up things that you don't want to do and taking on things that you might not want to do. But soon those things become sources of nectar to you also, So that's the process. And this, understanding the Supersoul. Now we're coming up on one of my all-time favorite verses. I don't know if we'll get to it tonight, number 20. Not 20, I'm sorry, 22. Maybe next week we'll get it. Where he's describing how the living entity, we make our own destiny by how we associate with the modes. The word Sangha. Next time I get a chance to do the Sunday feast lecture, here's the topic. Shreyas, Prayas, and Sangha. Those three and together, and the interrelations there, and there's a lot there. And I won't get into it now, but everything depends on Sangha. What you choose to associate with, who you choose to associate with, the ideas you choose to associate with, and they all affect you, and then determine what other kind of Sangha you're going to get. So being determined or being fortunate enough to get sadhu Sangha, to get the Sangha of devotees, is the most auspicious thing in the world. That's why there's a verse, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi, Lava Mata Sadhu Sange, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. This is in, I think Lord Chaitanya says this. When you repeat like that, is their emphasis. Association with sadhus. All the scripture says, even a moment's association can give you all perfection. Meaning that it can turn your life in such a way that you get out of here. You go back to Godhead. But that's all important. And that's what Prabhupada gave us, his own association, and he introduced us to the whole parampara and the books. When we're reading the Bhagavatam, you're associating with Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit and Narada Muni. There's even one passage at the end of the chapter. There's in the first canto, there's a verse glorifying Narada Muni, which I memorized 50 years ago, but I forget now. But but in the purport, Prabhupada sends at the end of the purport, and we should all appreciate Narada Muni, who so mercifully appeared in this chapter. Right? And it's like that. Because it's all on the spiritual platform, you can associate with these great souls by hearing about them. Which is very exciting. Just like we can associate with Krishna by chanting his name. So, where was I? Did I finish that purport? If there's no discussion on 15, we'll move on to 16. Bahirantashta bhutanam acharam charamevacha sukshmatvatad vigyayam durastam chantike chatat. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Purport. In the Vedic literature, we understand that Narayan, the Supreme Person, is residing both outside and inside of every living entity. He is present in both the spiritual and material worlds. Although he is far, far away, still he is near to us. These are the statements of the Vedic literature. Asino duram vajati shayano yati sarvatak. Katha Upanishad 1-21. And because he is always engaged in transcendental bliss, we cannot understand how he is enjoying his full opulence. We cannot see or understand with these material senses. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act. But one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in devotional service can see him constantly. It is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that the devotee who has developed love for the Supreme God can see him always without cessation. And it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 11:54 that he can be seen and understood only by devotional service. Bhaktya tananya shakya. So there's a lot in this little purport. So this verse is also quoted in a different purport earlier. Atak Shri Krishna namadi nabave grayam indriyai sevan mukhe hijivado swayam eva spurachida. That Sri Krishna's name, etc. Name. There's these four elements that make up a person, supreme person or individual person. Name, form, qualities, and activities or pastimes. Name, form, quality. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. So, with our present materially covered and contaminated senses, we can't really perceive or certainly understand Krishna's transcendental form, name, form, qualities, or senses. But if we begin serving the Lord with the tongue, by chanting and tasting prasadam, gradually all the senses become purified, and you can begin to perceive Him everywhere. You know, we're trained to see that. The seventh chapter. I'm just working on the seventh chapter now of Bhagavad Gita, going over it, finding a few little corrections that need to be made. And the seventh chapter naturally follows the sixth chapter. What happened in the sixth chapter is that the process of meditation was explained, and there's a section there describing samadhi. You know, one perceives the highest happiness through transcendental senses, and once achieving this, he thinks there is no greater gain, and he can never be shaken and free from all misery. But it's hard to get there by Ashtanga yoga for modern. Who can do it? You know, Krishna gives, okay, go to a sacred, secluded place, sit on this mat, you know, this Krishna mat, and get yourself a deer skin somehow. Don't kill any deer, find a dead deer skin, and sit on the skin. Why? So because the snakes are all around in the secluded forest, you know, and they've developed, you know, natural selection. The deer have something in their skin that repels the snakes. So you sit on a deer skin and you don't have to worry about snakes. We learn that from hearing Prabhupada lecture. So anyway, okay, now I'm sit there, and then you're going to sit like this, you know. And then the hardest part to me is to try to see the space between the eyebrows. I can't do that even for 5 seconds. But anyway, meditate, you know, and control the mind. The mind can be your best friend, can be your worst enemy. So you have to control it, chanting Om inside, whatever, you know. Pranayama, he even mentions. Who's going to do that? You know, you got millions of people, they want to practice yoga, right? They go to the yoga ashram and the studio, but they're not going to go to the Himalayas, and they'll get a little back in shape. I did it, you know, by gymnastics. So Arjuna says, I can't do it. It's impossible to control the mind that way. It's like a hurricane. Chanchalati mana Krishna. So then Krishna says, yes, it's difficult, but it's possible by practice. You know? I said, okay, what's the practice? So he said, just have to persevere. So, all right, so what if I fail? What happens then? So he's not, in other words, he can't do it. And then you have to, well, who is Arjuna? Arjuna is the intimate friend of Krishna. He's so much more qualified than we are. He lived 1,000 years because he lived in the Dwapara Yuga. So it's hopeless for us. So Krishna says, don't worry, Arjuna. Last verse, Yoginam api sarvesham. The best yogi of all, who's one who's always thinking of me with great love and faith and serving me. And that's, you can almost hear Arjuna, big exhale. What a relief. Because I'm his best friend. Of course, I'm always thinking of Krishna. So the next verse, the first verse in chapter 7, Krishna says, okay, now I'm going to tell you a more organic, natural way that your mind can become attached to me. You don't have to go anywhere. You just have to change the way you see yourself and you see this world. So anyway, he goes through and he starts explaining, look, here's what the world is made of. Okay, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. These are the progressively more subtle elements, but that's it. They're all dead. None of them are alive. You know, even your mind, it's enlivened because you're using it, you know, but it's the soul that's alive. So anyway, he says, now, when you see the light of the sun or the light of the moon, you understand that's me. Why? Because it's my energy. And you're perceiving it because of my energy in the form of your senses. So therefore you are reminded of me when you see the light of the sun and the moon, when you smell the fragrance of the earth or the flowers, the taste of water, the ability in man. He goes through a list that we encounter every day of our lives, but we never think twice about it. So in this way, he's beginning to show how we can be conscious of Krishna everywhere. When you just drink some water, oh, I remember that verse, Rasoham Apsukonteya. Oh, thank you, Krishna, for giving us this water. You know, and you see the light of the sun and the moon and whatever. So that's the step one. It's the first step in God realization. It's almost akin to the universal form idea. seeing the earth, as the bones of Krishna and whatever, God. So gradually, if we want to, and at the same time we're practicing, worshiping Krishna with chanting and hearing and everything, then we're becoming more purified, and Krishna is also giving us so much encouragement through the little dollops of bliss that you feel when you're more Krishna conscious, and like we're coming up on August. It's not that far away, right? March, April, May, June, July, August. So again, there'll be a Rath Yatra in LA, and we can all get, if you want to go on the bus, the bus is the best, believe me. It's worth it. And there's thousands of people and devotees, and it's great. Have you ever been? This year, you should go. Yeah. It's always the first Sunday in August, unless it's the Ekadashi. Then it's the second. Yeah, put it on your schedule. Yeah, you don't want to miss it. So these are all things, and it's just glorifying Krishna, in a special way, the Jagannath. But it's just everyone's exuberant. It's like the contact high, and you get swept up in all the joy and the activity, and that's Krishna inside. He's inviting you. He's saying, yes, more and more of this. So that's how sadhu sangha, that one moment of association, lava matra, means it can lead out of the material world. Oh boy, so we're almost out of time. Which one did you do? 15? I think we did 15. Yes, so it is without senses. No, we did 16. Yeah, I think we'll have to start with 17 on Monday. But before we do, yes?
I had a quick question on the one. A quick question on the verse on 15 where he says he knows the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered, since God is all-knowing, but how do we apply that to our life, what He wants us to do moving forward so that we make the right decision?
So, okay, He knows the past, right? And He knows the present. So assuming that we believe that, then the next step is to think that, yes, He really does have our best interests in mind. He says in the end of the 5th chapter, at the end of that verse 29, Suridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantam richati. Word surit means the ever well-wishing friend. You can't have a friend that good without Krishna, because there's always some limit. Okay, you've been sleeping on my couch now for a month and a half, so I really have to ask you to leave. But Krishna, He never gets tired of trying to help us. He's within our heart and trying to guide us. So he has no ulterior motive. He just wants. So now, if you believe that, then you can follow the instructions of Him personally that gives in the Bhagavad Gita, or His representative, who's also simply like a pure medium, channeling, to gradually progress toward that state where you're feeling. He says, "Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogadhar." Prasanna manasa. It means your mind is always joyful and peaceful. You can't have that on the material side. If you're depending on circumstances outside, if it gets too cold, or you're suddenly snowed in for a week, and is anyone going to come to save us? People died on the hill there. It's horrible. So the material world is like that. Whatever situation you have is sure to change. So if it's very happy, okay, it's not. You can't. It's always changing. That's what Bhava Sagara means, the ocean of change. Birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, and death. None of which are pleasant. Haribol. So anyway, by taking up the process seriously, because now I have faith. Yes, Krishna, He's my ever well wisher. He promises. So even though he's telling me to do something that materially I think is not going to be so pleasant, I'll do it anyway. And I see, well, all these devotees did it. You know, they all got up early and took a cold shower and chanted Hare Krishna, and now they're very blissfully dancing, so maybe it can happen to me. I know it's going to be really tough to do, but it's worth it. And we do it on the material side too. You know, with, I know it's going to be tough to get into the college. You get into the college, you know, with great effort, and you have to pay the fees, take on some debt, but I know I'll get a good job when I get out, and, you know, it's worth it. And so on the faith, you know, but unfortunately that faith is often dashed. You got out of, I went through, I worked really hard, I got my degree and everything, but where's the job? There's no job, but I have this $50,000 debt. You cheated me, you know, but Krishna will never cheat us. He'll never cheat. Anyway, we're almost out of time. I'll do a little time for a poem. Just a minute, half minute. Okay, so, Madhudesha Madhudi Mayamadava Mududi Matallika Mugdha Mama Madana Mohana Madama Dayamanaso Maha Maha Moham. Did you notice that it was all M's? Every word begins with M. O Master of Mathura, so that's Krishna. O Master of Mathura, lovely Lord of Goddess Shri, the Goddess of Fortune. O Master of Mathura, lovely Lord of Goddess Shri, who plays such maddening melodies upon your murali, that's the flute. O Cupid's charmer, please redeem a life till now misspent by joyfully destroying my extreme bewilderment. Okay, we'll meditate on that, and then Monday we'll reconvene. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. No time. It's from that book, Stavamala. Maybe.